So thanks everybody for joining us today. You're here for why data is the key to accelerating your back to market strategy. Quick agenda, we just went through housekeeping. We'll set aside about 20 minutes for Jake and I to do discussion, and then we'll leave 5 minutes for Q&A at the end. So we've got Jake here with us from Scaled. Jake consistently designs repeatable, sustainable sales models and processes that outperform industry standards. He's the CEO and founder of Scaled Consulting. He helps executives around the world accelerate business growth with data-backed sales solutions. Before building Scaled, he held the role of VP of Sales at No Wait, that was acquired by Yelp, head of sales and customer success at Chartbeat, and was VP of sales at Glassdoor, which was acquired by Recruit Holdings for 1.2 billion in 2018. So impressive CV there, Jake. Great to have you on.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, man. I'm looking forward to the topic here. I think sometimes when people hear the word data, they're like, oh no, what are we going to get into? But I think we're going to make it exciting and hopefully very actionable for everyone. So I'm looking forward to it. Definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm Jason Hubbard. I'm Vice President of Growth at SalesIntel. I was previously Vice President of Marketing at Cirrus Insight. At SalesIntel, we pride ourselves on providing the highest quality B2B data in the industry. Interesting time for us with ZoomInfo, our primary competitor, going public a couple of weeks ago. Now valued at about $20 billion. So if you need market validation, that's about as close as you can get. So yeah, exciting times across the board for everybody. Definitely interesting times, which is a lot of what we'll talk about today. There's three primary things we'd like you guys to walk away from today's webinar with. First is finding the right now buyers using intent and contact data. Second, using that data and insight to fuel modern go-to-market strategies with a heavy focus on LinkedIn. And then third, tactically, how do you use that data on LinkedIn to add, post, engage, and ultimately convert your target audience and target accounts. So cool. So yeah, we've got a few kind of pre-scripted questions to go over, and then as the conversation goes, we'll just let that naturally flow there. But Jake, I mean, to start it off, obviously things have been pretty dramatic here lately.
Sure.
Everything's definitely been turned upside down for most of us. With everybody, and especially in the business world, trying to get back onto some sort of track. What has changed primarily? What have you seen? Especially whenever it comes to number of opportunities, meetings, impact on buyers, overall pipeline. What have you guys seen?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, thank you, Jason, for having me. I'm looking forward to this talk. And then yeah, just do us a favor here. If you guys don't mind, a few of you have done it. Just drop your company name and your role in the chat. Z Ali, what's going on, man? Long time no chat. So drop it in there so we can kind of try to tailor some of the questions too. So I think that there's what we first saw is everyone went into a turtle shell, and I still talk to entrepreneurs and to CEOs who are like, the market right now, you can't sell. And it's like, that's just not true, guys. Like, there are industries, I cannot tell you. I'll tell you this. I have probably in the last month, 2 months, I know I've talked to at least 200 CEOs and VPs of sales minimum. And I can tell you there are more of them that are like, actually things are going pretty well and we're going to hit our number, as opposed to, oh my God, the world is falling. And I think when you go back to market, you have to think about I want to give credit where credit's due. I think maybe it's Morgan Ingram. He had a good way. It's like, your persona of your customers. And if your customers in an industry that's doing well, then like you're in full-blown sales mode. And so I think what we're seeing is that companies need to really look at their prospects and the prospects of their prospects, right? And that's in B2B in particular. That's how you have to be thinking, not just their industry, their industry's industry, they sell into's industry. It's, what are the industries that are doing well, where it's kind of business as usual? We should be using a more aggressive outreach strategy. What are the industries on the flip side that have got decimated? And therefore, again, like, I'm probably not reaching out to like Trip Actions right now, right? I know that they're starting to rebuild. They're thinking about, so I would maybe be planting a few seeds for when they rebuild. Then there's everybody in the middle, that if you had a more compelling value prop that would help them, drive more revenue, reduce costs, that they would be in the market and kind of shift to bucket one. And that's why, I think, Jason, when it comes to sales intel, intent, that's why I feel like intent data is so important. That, right now, I think right now, many VPs of sales have been like, yeah, we know there's some markets that are doing well, but, we're not quite sure what those are. But that's where I really feel like organizations need to take, let's just be honest, we got lazy. We put all of our customers in the ready to buy bucket. And now, and when they all flipped to the not ready to buy bucket, we got lazy again and flipped everyone there. And as we come back to market, we've got to think about the right segmentation and the right, like 100% proactive, drip plus 80% proactive. You've got to think about the different plays based on where your customers are. And so I think that's one of the most important exercises if you're a sales ops manager, VP of sales, marketing, client solutions manager, owner, is to really think, where are the industries I should be spending my time, and double and triple down there.
Yeah, we saw a lot of the same stuff on our side. I mean, one of the very first things we did was we went back and reassessed and built a list of companies and industry that we looked at that were largely COVID proof. And so we went and reprioritized those for the sales and marketing team outreach. And then and central to all this is being nimble, being attentive to what's connecting, what's not. Similar story for us was, as far as our product offering, not a lot changed, but what we focused on and what was converting did change. So in particular, we have the largest coverage of work mobile numbers in the industry. That went from sort of like a nice to have to, oh, holy crap, we're closing deals because of work mobile numbers. And so, we, of course, when we saw that, we started really focusing on our marketing collateral, our sales outreach, stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, it went from, sort of a, nice to have, additional thing that we could sort of pitch, but wasn't connecting very well, to like, oh, holy crap, we can't get in touch with anybody because they're direct to dial desk phones. Nobody's there manning them. So how do we get in touch with people? And, saw similar things when we did a virtual event with Chorus not long after. And we'll get to some of this later on, but one of the things that we saw, in the immediate aftermath of COVID, was you saw, activity rates, in particular outbound, calls and emails, went through the roof. So 25, 30+% increase in volume, but at the same time, number of connections, number of meeting sets and stuff all fell. It was because they weren't tailoring who they were reaching out to with the right content. They were just trying to correct it with just more volume, which of course, when everybody does that, makes it that much more noisy and that much harder to break through. So yeah, I mean, central lesson to that is, you got to be smart about it. You've got to react quickly. You've got to be attentive. And one of the things I've talked about a lot in this is, at the end of the day, like, best practices and what you should be doing hasn't particularly changed. It's just less forgiving if you're lazy and you're not doing the things you need to be doing.
The results will keep plummeting. That's right. And I think, that's where, again, like, marrying some of this intent data and the data that you all have with, LinkedIn interaction, I think is the play of the future, which is, can you basically build a little bit of relationship capital, not social selling? Can you actually interact, comment, connect, engage with people, and then use work mobile phone to then follow up? Hey, you know what, Jason, look, hey, I've followed your content on LinkedIn for the last 2 or 3 weeks here. I've really enjoyed it. This thing really stood out. Here's what we do. Is this something of interest for you right now? And I feel like the new go-to-market play has got to be a mix of sales organizations nurturing people and not just going straight for the DM, and then using intent data to know who to nurture, and then using phone and email follow-up to then be able to engage off of LinkedIn as well on platform.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So yeah, it's a good segue into intent data. So yeah, I mean, we announced our new partnership with Bombora a few weeks ago. So most of you are probably familiar. Bombora is the market leader in intent data. So really exciting to be able to marry and pair their intent data with our contact and account database. Because of course they all go, they go together like peanut butter and jelly. Intent data helps you identify the companies that are actually in a buying process, but then you need to figure out who you need to reach out to at those companies, across all the channels, including LinkedIn, as well as email and phone.
Yeah. And so what do you think? I mean, Jason, for you, like, how do you define, like, why was this a partnership for you guys so critical? I'm curious. I'm sure people are like, why intent data? Like, what do you feel like that's going to help people do who might not be as familiar with like intent data and what it does?
Yeah, so no matter how well you've defined your ICP, your ideal customer profile, how in depth an understanding you have of your buying centers, buying personas, decision makers, all of that. Even if you've nailed that 100%, on average, only about 15% of those companies are actively looking to buy at any given time. So that's a pretty big, miss rate if you're just going after all of them, especially at a time when you really need to be targeted. What intent data allows you to do is leverage, the signals people have as far as primarily content that they're consuming, that can be trackable. And there's three general strategies for how you can try and gather, intent signals. So the first are, basically siloed data sources like G2. So of course you can pay G2 to get access to data insights that they're getting on their platform. So of course, for anybody that happens to not be familiar with G2, they're one of the leading platforms for gathering reviews on B2B solutions. So if you pay for additional insights from G2, they'll let you know, which topics, which categories are surging. They'll use things like reverse IP lookups to be able to try and guess at, which companies are doing the looking. Then of course, if you're leaving reviews on G2, then you've created an account profile, which oftentimes will include what company you're with. And so you can gather a lot of this data about who's actually going out and looking at these different solutions. The other is something called bid stream. And so this is where companies will go out and they'll buy ads really cheaply just to get up on content websites where they can gather data primarily from reverse IP lookups, again, about who's hitting those sites and consuming specific pieces of content. The problem with that strategy is it's really limited just to keywords. And so, we can use ABM, account-based marketing, as an example.
Sure.
An article that's just generally about what is ABM isn't going to give you a whole lot of intent, versus an article about what are the best data solutions for driving an ABM campaign. That's going to be a really strong intent signal for us. And then the third option is what Bombora does. And so Bombora has a partnership with a whole bunch of companies where they train their natural language processing and algorithms to actually understand the meat of the articles and the content that people are consuming. And so they can make those distinctions in types of content, and they can actually get to the heart of what's going on there, and really help you identify who's actually surging intent-wise.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, look, why this is, and I'll just tell you as a consulting firm why this is important. That it goes back to those buckets. That where this is critical is the messy middle in particular, which is there's those industries that have been decimated, that are in a lot of trouble and are going to still be months to figure it out, or your off buying cycle, whatever it is. And then there's those industries, but there's everybody that's in between. And why I think I feel like intent data is some of the most underutilized data that people have access to. And it's because as sales and marketing and sales operations, for some reason, we just don't trust machines. We always think we're smarter. We're like, yeah, but we know our ICP. And it's like, look, let's take that again. We got 20% we know we're doing well, 20% we know we're doing bad, but let's take that 60%. And I think a typical sales approach is you just kind of reach your hand in the bucket and you assign Lisa 50, Johnny 50, Susie 50, like there's no rhyme or reason. And I'm telling you, I've seen the results. I've talked to companies that utilize intent data and they increase their proficiency. And I think now more than ever, better segmenting that middle is going to be critical. Because again, maybe you trim down your sales organization. You're thinking about ramping again. Where do you hire? Are you looking at more of a vertical strategy? Which verticals? Are there verticals that seem to have more companies that have an intent? So that's why I feel like this data is just more important than ever. That we've got to start to think about, not just like you said, segmenting by your ICP, but like, guys, like that's the strategy from before we had cookies. Like,
Right.
yeah, I get it. Like, yeah, but why not add in additional X factors that would give someone a higher propensity to want to do business with you. And we all know sales is the game of inches. Even if that increases our likelihood to narrow our segment market by 10%, that means your whole SDR team is at least 10% more efficient. And so the results here are real. And I think more people, I mean, as we move forward into this next phase in 2020, 2021, I think we're just going to have to trust more and more that the machines and algorithms are probably going to do a better job of predicting best fit than, my gut.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a mix of both. Yeah, it's a mix of both.
And it gets us away from the spray and pray approach. And yeah, I mean, the other, there's the 15% that are actively buying at any given time. The other stat that's really important, and if you're not paying attention to this type of thing, should be slightly terrifying, which is, on average, most B2B buyers are 60 to 70% down their buyer journey before you have a conversation with them. So if you can get in front of them at an earlier stage, especially before they're evaluating competitors or already further down that pipeline where you're trying to play catch up, those are huge competitive advantages. So Jake, if we've used intent data, we've identified the companies that are actively in a buying process at this time. You've used a data solution like SalesIntel to identify who the decision makers are at that organization. How do you leverage all of that information now that you know who to go after and who to prioritize?
Yes, and I think this is where we've got to get better as sales operations, sales leaders, and marketing leaders. That we have, once we got our shiny new sales engagement platforms, really, which literally this category started 5 years ago, we really started to over-index toward efficiency. And so we started to think about how do we make these templates and our call, how do we make everything as automated as possible with as few custom fields? And by the way, at a high level, there's nothing wrong with that, right? You should. It should be a mix of strategies, and that strategy is applicable to a tier of accounts. But what we forgot to do is train sales development teams how to actually use research, use insights to generate custom messaging. And I'm telling you, there are so many. I think the stat is 100. Oh gosh, what is it? There's 125 million sales calls every day. And there's 149 billion emails or something like that. I can't remember the exact stats. It's a lot. And I just feel like now, and then that's where LinkedIn comes in, that more organizations have to use all of this data together to say, okay, these are our target accounts. Let's connect with all those same people on LinkedIn. Let's start to put posts out. And then when they engage, then we reach out via email, we reach out call, we reach out via email, via LinkedIn or whatever the platform might be. So I feel like what's going to be important now as we go back is that you've got to think of integrating these strategies, that it's not enough to just hit send all. And it's why again, we're continuing to see diminishing returns, because a custom field, guys, customization of an email isn't, an insert field. Right. That's not what customization is. So you've got to do a really good job of tiering your customers, because you also can't afford to customize for everybody. So, it's an and strategy. So you've got to, once you understand your plays for these different stratuses of companies, it's for this group, we're going custom on these two, and then bulk on these, and LinkedIn here, etc. And so I just feel like the complexity of the sequences is nowhere near where it needs to be. And you as an organization should be optimizing your sequences in real time. Marketing goes and spends $200,000 a month on advertising. They have a whole team that does performance ad marketing. You have a sales development team where you're spending X tens or hundreds of $1,000, and you spend half of one time's overworked sales operations person's time and a bunch of hacked together SDR leaders' time trying to optimize your outbound engine. And these things are spitting out so much data that, again, I'm using data from SalesIntel to better inform how we're going to rewrite these sequences to get people to faster. Hey, they are resonating with this value proposition. Let's start to rewrite other sequences. And we're re-uploading and uploading our sequences weekly or bi-weekly. This is going to be the new world that we've got to live in for outbound. And that's why, again, having tools like SalesIntel and others are going to be a critical component of this process, because you need to cut through the noise faster, and you're not going to do that with the more button. You're going to do that with a higher quality button. And that's where we've leaned too far toward more is better versus outcomes are better. Right? I'm engineering for effectiveness, not efficiency always. So I think that's the big area of opportunity.
Yeah. So you mentioned outcomes as opposed to activities. What does that look like as far as trying to structure and scale focused on activities?
Well, I think what we're trying to do is move as many of our clients as possible away from tracking activities. And I think that there's probably sales or sales operations leaders on here who are like, what? What do you mean? Well, let me just tell you why. Because let me go back to LinkedIn. How, are you asking your people to reach out and connect and comment on people on LinkedIn? A lot of you probably are. How are you tracking that? Oh, wait, you can't. So you're asking your sales team to perform 20%, 30% of their activities daily and something that can't be tracked. Therefore, whenever all we had was the phone, it was easy. A call equaled an appointment. When we added an email, it was still kind of easier. Call or email equaled appointment. But now we're nurturing people. We're sending pieces of content. We're reaching out on LinkedIn. Those are influence type of activities. So we're trying to move our clients toward, number of, we'll call it meaningful conversations. So instead of having 100 activities, you need to have 7 meaningful conversations every day, which means that this person's going to set up a meeting or they're going to get you to the right person. And you can define it. There's a lot of different ways. So I would like to see more of us move toward more of a focus on quality versus the traditional focus for forever, which has been on quantity. And that's where we're trying to really push our clients to move to that. Like, hey, look, if our people have 5 quality conversations, we know that turns into this, but you can't track a lot of the activity on LinkedIn. So you actually don't know how many activities they need to do on LinkedIn. So instead we move toward outcomes. And that's really where I feel the future has got to be. It's got to be focused on quality, not just volume.
Yeah, and quick follow-on question to that. There's a reason why so many people fall back on activities, both as far as just an output, and also as far as what they're tracking and reporting on, because at the end of the day, those are the easiest things to do. Hey, it's harder to get meetings, or we're worried about pipeline. Make more calls, send more emails, or I'm trying to track people's performance. I've got tools that tell me how many calls, how many connections, how many emails, how many opens, how many clicks.
Yeah.
That's really easy to go pull reports on, stuff like that. The other stuff's hard and takes more time and effort.
That's right.
Do you have advice for how people can make that switch?
Yeah, I mean, I think, look, the first is to maybe think about minimums. If you feel like the phone is going to be a good method for you all, and by the way, I'm big on the phone right now. I feel like, I don't know how about you, but I can tell you, I talk to a lot of CEOs. I get less calls on this than I've ever gotten the last 2 or 3 years since COVID hit. So I think the phone is trading at an all-time low. So you can have call minimums. Hey guys, we believe in the phone. It's a part of it. So make sure you're executing it in sequence, 20, 30 calls a day, whatever it is. But then for the most part, you focus on the outcomes. So to me, it's maybe about just kind of trying to re-engineer how many conversations do you need to have to get a qualified meeting instead of activities? Because there's a lot of shadow activities that are happening that aren't being tracked no matter what you do. And so I think it's moving to more of an activity minimum mindset versus a maximum mindset. And then if you still want to have activity metrics, and then trying to convert to more of what's the first outcome that's going to predict a qualified meeting.
Yep. Well, that's great. We're getting close to the end. We've got
I know, man.
several questions already in here, so let's make sure we got plenty of time for them. So Lauren was saying that she agrees she's finding LinkedIn outreach is more meaningful, but difficult to track. Scott's asking specifically, he's a new SalesIntel customer, wanting to know some documentation or steps for maximizing quality of those intent signals. Scott, do me a favor, whenever we send the recap email, reply to that email, and I'll get you scheduled with Allison on our CSM team. She'll sit down with you and actually help you build that out. So we'll get that in place for you, as opposed to just sending you some collateral and having you figure it out on your own. Because for anybody that's familiar, Bombora has 7,000 intent topics. So nailing what exactly you're going to be focusing on as far as searching intent, there's a lot of art to that. So yeah, please reply to that email. Also take note of that so that we make sure we follow up with you.
He's got a kickoff call already. He's ready to rock. Scott,
yeah, exactly.
I like it. And Scott, if you guys need help optimizing the engine overall, that's where we come in.
Exactly. Jake Z's asking, you had a LinkedIn challenge.
Oh gosh. Z, DM me because I'm not sure. We've done a lot of LinkedIn challenges. I've
Yeah.
done a lot of challenges on LinkedIn and different things to get people like up and producing content. You know, the one piece I will say about LinkedIn that's not the you know, it's somewhat relevant is that if you're going to be successful on LinkedIn, you have to produce content,
Yes.
right? Like you want to position yourself as a thought leader in a domain or a thought leader in a topic. And so I think what a lot of people need to realize is like it's not going to happen via reshares. It's not going to happen via, you know, just putting your own 2 cents. We've just seen it time and time again. The sales organizations that are most successful, their salespeople actually, you know, put thought into 1 or 2 posts a week. And so it's just an important part of this because then guess what? So guess what? You put an article on LinkedIn. Let me just give you like a makeup play here. You put an article up on LinkedIn, 800 word article. It takes you an hour and a half to write. It's based off of some white paper your company wrote. Then I connect with these individuals. Maybe I comment on their posts, and then I email them. Again, I use my data from sales. I email them, hey, John, I'm not sure if this topic is top of mind. I wrote this article on LinkedIn. It's about this. Let me know if this is of interest, and I'd be happy to talk further about it. Just by writing an article on LinkedIn, people are immediately like, Jason's smart. Jason wrote an article. And so there's just so many different ways to leverage LinkedIn and outbound and in the sales process that, producing content is a really important component of that.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. So I've got a question for you that's a personal conundrum I have. So, pat myself and my marketing team on the back, like I think we create a ton of really good content, get a lot of great engagement off of it. It is like pulling teeth for me to get my sales team to use and leverage that content. Um, what advice do you have? Because I mean, I know it's a common thing.
Very
Uh,
common.
but yeah, it's definitely an acute problem I have, and it's always a challenge to bridge that gap in those silos between sales and marketing.
It
But
is.
we do all that we know how to do it, but it's still a challenge to get them to use the stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think a couple of things. One, just start with a small pod. We consistently see that you're going to have 1 or 2 people that are like, cool, I'm down to post a couple times a week and see what it looks like. So you don't try to boil the ocean and deploy LinkedIn. That's my advice. You don't try to deploy like a massive strategy to the entire sales org. Start with a pod because salespeople follow success. And if I can get these 2 or 3 people performing, and the easiest way to produce content is repurpose conversations that you had with clients. Hey, I had a really good conversation with Lori Turner Wilson, or I had a good conversation with a VP of operations. And here are the top 2 things that VP of operations are thinking about in 2020. Post, right?
Mm.
I think conversations with clients are great, or repurposing the marketing. So marketing writes a write-up about intent data for you guys, like to make it very actionable. I would say, hey guys, here's 2 or 3 prompts that you should share to sales leaders. Like why intent data is the new ICP. And then like they share their own thoughts. They don't just reshare a post. The key to a successful LinkedIn article is you can't just reshare posts. LinkedIn will ding you. You have to put some original thought on it. So just put some original thought, start with a small group, repurpose marketing to where they pull out the insights from the article and share that. And then think about the conversations that you have. That's it.
Great advice. We had somebody asking, just to recap, we will be sharing a recording of the webinar after this is done. We're at the end of our time here. I can hang around for a few extra minutes if you can, Jake. If anybody has any extra questions for us, go ahead and pop those in. But if not, we can go ahead and wrap this.
Wrap it up. Yeah, awesome. And you guys can find me, hit me up on LinkedIn. As you can imagine, I'm quite active on LinkedIn. That's why I talk about it so much. But it's a really powerful platform. And I think, look, this intent data that we've talked about today is no joke. That as you go back to market, identifying those individuals that are going to be more likely is going to be harder than it used to be. You kind of, again, you get the ends, but that's where I'm excited about that ad for you all and our partnership and everything there too. So yeah, I appreciate it, everyone.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, everybody. Like I said, we'll follow up with you shortly as soon as we get the recap up. And thanks so much, Jake. This has been great.
Thank you, everyone. Find me on LinkedIn, DM me. Scott, Lori, I got you. Don't worry.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
All right. Take care.